Now, when it comes to heat treating material, here's interesting things to note. So 4140 annealed, S7 D2, A2, all these different materials that can get heat treated, you can either flame harden them or heat treat them. And what happens during that process is you have grains in the material like this. And then whenever you heat treat something, it gets to its austenizing temperature. Every material is different, and what will happen is the grains start to move, and then it gets really, brittle, right? And then you quench it. Now, if you don't quench it, they'll draw back to its original state or close to it. But if you quench it in oil, water, air, depending on what material it is, the grains will remain brittle and hard. And then what you have to do is go through a temper process. And the temper process is what you do whenever you're aiming for a specific rock wool, such as 48 rock wool. Well, you heat treat something like 4140 annealed to 1600 degrees, you quench it in oil, and then you draw it back through a secondary process called tempering. And what that'll do is it'll take the hardened grains and it'll relax them. And you control that process through temperature and time. Then, annealing is a whole different other process that is taking something that is already hardened and bringing it back to its original state. And you do not want to try to heat treat again after that because, over time, heat treating something, drawing it back, heat treating something, drawing it back isn't really good for the material. So you only really get one good shot if you're gonna, have an appropriate part. You can do it more than once, but not recommended. And at least from my experience, And then there are parts like D2, S7, and A2 that have to get through a vacuum furnace. And what we do for that is we actually wrap our materials in tin foil and put paper towel or toilet paper in there, and it burns up the oxygen, creating a vacuum. So that's how we heat treat A2, S7, and D2, things that require a vacuum furnace. Other materials we send out completely because we don't have the appropriate technology. And then S7 is another good cool note, because we actually have to, after the temper process, which it recommends to temper it twice, is you actually cryogenically freeze it. So the grains are like this. After quenching at its austenizing temperature, you temper it, it draws it back a little bit, but there are still some grains that are stuck brittle and hard. You cryogenically freeze it, and it draws those back as well. And that is a brief synopsis of heat treating.